Coach. I'm your host, Robert. NCAA Week 13. Next week, Week 14, is the conference championship games. And then we have Week 15, which is the annual Army versus Navy game. And then we start the playoffs. 14 playoff this year. Wow, a lot going on. Some teams that were favored in it that might not actually make it because of conference play. So we'll see what's going on. Let's run this down. We're starting with the Mid-America Conference with the Ball State Cardinals at 4-7 versus the Miami of Ohio Red Hawks at 5-6. Miami is 5-2 in conference, tied with Ohio for the Mid-American East Conference division. East Division, excuse me. Miami's favored by 8 at home. I got them winning and covering. The Akron Zips for 5-6 versus the aforesaid Ohio Bobcats at 7-4, tied with Miami of Ohio. Akron's actually favored by 3 on the road, which was kind of weird to me. I don't know why they were favored on the road. I'm giving them 3 points to Ohio, so Ohio +3, and then winning and covering. And if the two teams end up tied, I believe Ohio has a tiebreaker. Out of the ACC, we have the North Carolina State Wolfpack at 5-6 versus the North Carolina Tar Heels at 8-3. Tar Heels are 5-2 in their conference. They're tied with Ohio. What's that right here? I don't know what I wrote. It's weird. Anyway, they're leading their division, tied with them. Somebody, I guess, I wrote. I don't know what I wrote. Anyway, North Carolina, favored at home by 12. I got them winning and covering. Out of the American Conference, Houston Cougars at 9-2 versus the Memphis Tigers at 7-4. Houston's 5-2 in conference, tied with Tulsa, and Navy's one game behind Navy. So got a little cluster going on there for the American Conference. Houston favored by 5 at home. I have them winning and covering. Out of the Pac-12, we have the Washington Huskies at 10-1 versus the Washington State Cougars at 8-3. Both teams are 7-1 in conference. The winner of this game will win the Pac-12 North and go to the Pac-12 title game. Washington, the Huskies are favored by 5.5 on the road. I have them winning and covering. Out of the Mountain West, you have the Boise State Broncos at 10-1 versus the 8-3 Arizona Air Force Falcons. Boise State 6-1 in conference, tied with Wyoming for the Mountain Division lead. Boise State favored by 9.5. I have them winning, but I have Air Force covering. Conference USA, we have the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs 8-3 versus the Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles at 5-6. Louisiana will win the Conference USA West Division, win or no win. I have them winning and covering. The line is 7.5. Out of the MAC, we have Toledo at 9-2 versus the Western Michigan Broncos at 11-0. Broncos are 7-0 in conference. Obviously, they're undefeated. Toledo is 6-1 in conference. Probably Alabama's not going to lose. So Western Michigan, if they win, they'll be one of 2 undefeated teams. Unbeaten teams, and then we have. Actually, you know what? I'd love to see Alabama lose. I'd love to see Western Michigan being the only undefeated team. To see what the committee thinks of that. How do you leave a 12-0 MAC team out of the Final Four if everyone else has got beaten? And some teams with 2 and 3 losses. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Would they put them in or would they not? I'm going to say they would not. But then it starts all kinds of controversy. But I got Western Michigan winning, Toledo covering the 9. Out of the American Conference, we have the Cincinnati Bearcats at 4-7 versus the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes at 8-3. Tulsa's tied with Houston. 5-2 records in the division. 1 game behind Navy. So obviously Tulsa needs to win. They need Navy to lose. I had some help besides that, but I had Tulsa winning. I have them covering to 22 points. Out of the ACC, we have the Kentucky Wildcats at 6-5 versus the Louisville Cardinals at 9-2. Louisville 7-1 in the conference. They have a loss to Clemson. So with that, I think if they tie, obviously Clemson is a tiebreaker. Louisville is favored by 23 at home. I have them winning. I have Kentucky covering. Out of the Big Ten, this is a mess. Actually, the Big Ten is Minnesota 10-1. Excuse me, Michigan Wolverines 10-1 versus the Ohio State Buckeyes 10-1. Penn State's also 7-1 in conference. They're 9-2. If Michigan wins this game and Penn State wins, Michigan wins the Big Ten conference, or the East Division. If Ohio State wins this and Penn State wins, Penn State has a tiebreaker over Ohio State. Actually, no, Ohio State would have a better record. Never mind. Forget that. Yeah, because Penn State's 9-2. Okay. Okay, so never mind. I'm stupid. Actually, no, in conference, yeah. The record would. They'd have a better conference record. So, yeah. I'm still right. Okay. So, you have a humongous game here, Michigan and Ohio State. Not only is it the history of this is the 113th meeting of these two schools. First one in 1897. Michigan leads the world all-time series 58-47-6. Ohio State has won 4 straight. The last time in Columbus, 2014, Ohio State won 42-28. Ohio State has won 14 of the last 18. Michigan's last win in Columbus was in 2000. I want to see what the committee does for the 2-loss Michigan team. I want Ohio State to win. I want them to cover the 6.5. Then I want to see what happens if Penn State wins. And you have Penn State in the Big Ten championship game and Ohio State on the outside looking in. I think that's how it would go. I'm not 100% sure on tiebreakers in college. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But if Penn State's not in the running, then if I'm wrong about the way the conference versus the regular season record works, then this game is for the Big Ten East title. And then whenever this goes on to the Big Ten championship game. The ACC, we have the Virginia Cavaliers at 2-9 versus the Virginia Tech Hokies at 8-3. The Hokies are tied with North Carolina for the Coastal Division lead at 5-2. Hokies need to win, and they need to win and everyone else to lose between Pittsburgh and Miami. Then they hold the tiebreaker. Virginia Tech plus 17.5. I've been winning and covering. The American, we have the UCF Knights at 6-5 versus South Florida Bulls at 9-2. South Florida is 6-1 in the American Conference, tied for the East Division lead with Temple. South Florida is favored by 10. I have them winning and covering. Out of the Sun Belt, we have the Arkansas State Red Wolves at 6-4 versus the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns at 4-6. Arkansas State is 6-0 in conference. Appalachian State is 6-1. Troy's 5-1. So we'll see how that turns out for the Sun Belt Conference. I don't believe they have a championship game. Arkansas State's favored by 7 on the road. I've been winning and covering. Big Ten, we have the Michigan State Spartans at 3-8, which typically Michigan State's this should be another game kind of like Michigan, Ohio State, but Michigan State's down this year. Penn State 9-2. So yeah, they're all 7-1. So again, I'm not 100%. If you know how the ties work, because I know Penn State holds the tiebreaker over Ohio State because they've beat them in conference this year. So if both teams end up 8-1 in conference, And since Penn State won against Ohio State, would that make them division champions and go on to the Big Ten title game, or does it fall if they fall on the regular season record? I'm not sure. But Penn State favored by 12. I got them winning and covering. Out of the Big Ten, we have Nebraska Cornhuskers at 9-2 versus 7-4 Iowa Hawkeyes. If Iowa wins this, yeah, I know I wrote there. Nebraska is favored by. What's the line here? Oh, actually, Iowa's favored at home. Excuse me with that. Iowa's favored at home. By 3. Oh, I see what I wrote here. Iowa's 5-3 in conference. If Iowa wins and Minnesota and Wisconsin win or lose, there could be a 4-way tie for the Big Ten West division. Unfortunately, Iowa loses tiebreakers against the other teams, so I have Nebraska winning this. I give them the 3 points, so Nebraska +3. And then next we have out of the SEC, we have the Iron Bowl. Auburn Tigers 8-3 versus the Alabama Crimson Tide 11-0. The Iron Bowl has been going on since 1893. Alabama's 44-35-1. They've won 6 out of the last 8. Typically, the winner of this game, it seems like for quite a number of years now, have won the national title, or at least been in the national title game. What if Alabama loses? What does the committee do? Is a 1-loss Alabama better than a no-loss Western Michigan? Or a 1-loss Ohio State who doesn't make the Big Ten? Or a 2-loss Michigan who doesn't make the Big Ten championship game? Just imagine for a second the upset if Auburn beats Alabama. Could be interesting. I got Alabama winning. I got them covering the. I got Auburn covering the 18 and Alabama winning. But just what if Auburn beats Alabama? Out of the Big Ten, we have Minnesota Golden Gophers at 8-3 versus Wisconsin Badgers at 9-2. Wisconsin 6-2 in conference. Minnesota 5-3. I believe this is for the West Division. The winner of this would meet the winner of the East. Wisconsin is favored by 2 touchdowns at home. I had them winning, Minnesota covering. Out of the Pac-12, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish at 4-7 versus the USC Trojans at 8-3. USC is favored by 17 at home. They are 7-2 in conference. And they need Colorado to lose conference game and for a tie for the division. But the other Pac-12 game, speaking of the Devils, we have the Utah Utes 8-3 versus the Colorado Buffaloes at 9-2. Colorado favored by 10 at home. With a win here and a loss by USC, it would be tied in the conference, and USC holds the tiebreaker over Colorado. So, currently, Colorado has the number 1 spot there. Out of the Conference USA, we have the Florida International Golden Panthers at 4-7 versus the Old Dominion Monarchs at 8-3. Old Dominion favored by 13.5, and then winning the covering. Out of the American Conference, we have the Navy Midshipmen 8-2 versus the Southern Methodist Mustangs at 5-6. Navy's got 1 game up on Houston, but Navy plays Army in the last week. Navy's favored by a touchdown here, so for them to get the division, they need to win here and win against Army. Out of the Sun Belt, we have the Troy Trojans at 8-2 versus the Texas State Bobcats 2-8. With a win here, even though they win here, they would, and Arkansas State loses, they would tie for the conference lead. Because they lost to Arkansas State last week, they would not win their conference. Troy's favored by 26.5 on the road. If they win, I got them winning and covering. Another game out of the Sun Belt, we have the Appalachian State Mountaineers at 8-3 versus the New Mexico State Aggies at 3-7. With a win and Arkansas State loss, they would be number 1 in the Sun Belt. Appalachian State is favored by 17.5, and then winning and covering. Conference USA, we have the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers versus the Marshall at 8-3 versus the Marshall Thundering Herd 3-8. Western Kentucky needs a win and an Old Dominion loss for the division title. Western Kentucky is favored by 24. I have them winning and Marshall covering. South Carolina Gamecocks 6-5 versus the Clemson Tigers at 10-1. If Clemson wants the ACC Atlantic Division, they must win and a Louisville loss, because currently I believe they're tied. Clemson favored by 23.5 at home. I have them winning and covering. Out of the Pac-12, we have the Utah Utes versus the Colorado Buffaloes at 9-2. Already done that game. I got Colorado winning and covering at 10.5. That was fun. Out of the American, we have the East Carolina Pirates at 3-8 versus the Temple Owls at 8-3. Temple needs a win, and the South Florida loss to Central Florida for an East Division title. Temple favored by 20 at home. I get them winning and covering. ACC versus SEC, we have the Florida Gators at 8-2 versus the Florida State Seminoles at 8-3. Florida's got the SEC East wrapped up. This is just more of a tune-up game. Get ready for Alabama next week. Florida State's favored by 6.5 at home. I'm having Florida win, so I'm giving Florida 6.5. So Florida plus 6.5 with a cover over Florida State. And last but not least, we have the Mountain West Wyoming Cowboys at 8-3 versus the New Mexico Lobos at 7-4. Wyoming needs a win and a loss by Boise State to Air Force for the Mountain Division in the Mountain West. Wyoming favored by a field goal at home, on the road, I had them winning and covering. Whew, a lot going on here. That will wrap up Week 13. NCAA preview, Week 12 of the NFL preview coming tomorrow. If you're a WWE fan, check out the review for Survivor Series and NXT TakeOver. NXT TakeOver, 2 much-watched matches, DIY versus The Rival for 2 out of 3 falls for the tag titles. And then NXT main event, Samoa Joe versus Nakamura for the NXT title. Do not watch the main event of Survivor Series unless you have a minute and 26 seconds to kill. Thanks for watching Robert Sports Show. Don't just have a great night, have an American night.